It is a Wednesday afternoon, and Marcus is sitting in the break room at work, scrolling through his phone while his lunch goes cold beside him. And he has just read an article that says the average American pays over $400,000 in unnecessary fees, interest, and missed returns over the course of their lifetime. And Marcus does the thing that most people do when they read a number like that, which is to assume it must be referring to someone else. Someone reckless with money, someone who never checks their account, or who buys things they cannot afford. Because Marcus is not that person. And Marcus would know if something was quietly draining his finances at that scale, except that is precisely the thing about legal theft. It does not look like theft at all. It looks like a normal Wednesday. It looks like the same monthly subscriptions he has always had. It looks like the minimum payment he makes on time every single month. It looks like the savings account he opened 3 years ago at the bank his parents used. And none of it feels wrong because none of it is technically wrong. It is all completely legal, and that is exactly what makes it so effective at moving money out of his pocket and into someone else's. The financial system is not designed to steal from you in ways that feel like stealing, because that would be illegal and also inefficient. Instead, it is designed to create conditions where you voluntarily participate in arrangements that cost you enormous amounts of money over time, while feeling completely reasonable in the moment. And the three mechanisms that do the most damage are not exotic financial instruments or complicated investment schemes. They are ordinary, everyday financial decisions that the majority of people make without a second thought, and understanding them does not require a finance degree or a sophisticated understanding of markets. It requires only a willingness to look at familiar things from an unfamiliar angle, which is harder than it sounds because the financial industry has spent considerable resources making these arrangements feel normal, feel responsible even, feel like simply the way things work, and the way things work is costing you more than you have probably ever stopped to calculate. The first mistake is one that will feel deeply counterintuitive when you hear it stated plainly, which is that keeping your money in a traditional savings account at a major bank is one of the most reliable ways to slowly lose purchasing power over time. And the mechanism behind this is straightforward, even if its consequences are rarely discussed honestly. Because the average traditional savings account at a major bank currently pays somewhere between 0.01% and 0.5% annual interest, while inflation has historically averaged somewhere between 2.5% and 3.5% per year over long periods, which means that money sitting in a traditional savings account is not growing. It is shrinking in real terms every single year. A dollar that could buy a specific amount of goods and services today will buy measurably less of those same goods and services in 10 years. And if your savings account is growing at 0.3% annually while prices are rising at 3% annually, the gap between what your money is worth and what it costs to live is widening every month, while the account balance shows a number that appears to be going up, creating the precise illusion of safety and growth that makes this mistake so persistent and so costly. And the alternative is not complicated. High-yield savings accounts currently offer rates between 4% and 5% annually.
Income
Money
is
market
trending up,
accounts exist,
which is great,
Treasury
but
bills
look at this
exist,
gap.
and none of these
Savings
require
have remained
sophisticated
completely
financial
flat.
knowledge to access. They require only the 15 minutes it takes to open a different type of account. The second mistake is one that the credit card industry has spent billions of dollars normalizing, through language, through design, through the entire architecture of how statements are presented. Because the minimum payment on a credit card is not a financial tool designed to help you manage debt. It is a financial tool designed to maximize the amount of interest you pay over the longest possible period of time. And the mathematics of this are genuinely staggering when you see them laid out directly. Because if you carry a $5,000 balance on a credit card with a 22% interest rate and you make only the minimum payment each month, you will spend approximately 14 years paying off that balance, and you will pay roughly $7,000 in interest alone, meaning the original $5,000 in purchases will ultimately cost you $12,000, and this is not an edge case or a worst-case scenario. This is the designed outcome of the minimum payment system, which is constructed specifically so that the number feels manageable, feels responsible even, feels like you are handling your debt in an organized adult way, while the balance barely moves and the interest compounds quietly in the background. And what makes this particularly insidious is that paying the minimum on time every month gives you a good credit score, which means the system rewards the behavior that costs you the most money, with the metric that allows you to take on more debt at better rates, creating a loop that feels like financial health while functioning like a very slow and very legal drain. The third mistake is the most invisible of the three, because it does not appear on any statement and generates no monthly reminder. It is simply the opportunity cost of trading time for money without ever building anything that earns while you sleep. And the reason this qualifies as legal theft is that the tax system, the employment system, and the cultural framework around work are all structured in ways that make trading hours for a salary feel like the complete picture of how income works, when in reality, salary income is the most heavily taxed, least scalable, and most fragile form of income that exists. Because if you stop working, the income stops immediately. Because every raise you receive bumps you into a higher tax bracket, reducing the actual gain, and because there is a hard ceiling on how many hours you can sell, regardless of how much you are willing to work, while investment income, rental income, dividend income, and business income are all taxed at lower rates, continue generating without your direct involvement, and scale in ways that hourly labor cannot. And the mistake is not failing to immediately quit your job and start a business. The mistake is spending an entire career optimizing your salary while never building even a small parallel stream that earns independently. Because the difference between someone who retires with options and someone who retires with only Social Security is almost never income level during working years. It is almost always whether they built anything that earned while they were not looking. These three mechanisms share a common architecture, which is that they are all invisible at the transaction level and only reveal their true cost when you zoom out to the 10 or 20-year view. And the financial industry understands this completely, which is why so much effort goes into keeping your attention at the transaction level, at the monthly payment level, at the current balance level. Because the moment you extend your view to the decade level, the math becomes impossible to ignore, and the $400,000 figure that Marcus read in the break room is not a dramatic exaggeration designed to generate clicks. It is a conservative estimate of what the average person pays across a lifetime through a combination of these three mechanisms operating simultaneously and compounding against each other. And none of it requires any malicious actor to work. It simply requires that people remain focused on what things cost today rather than what they cost across the full arc of time. The shift that changes this is not primarily behavioral. It is perceptual, because once you genuinely internalize the 10-year view of a financial decision, the transaction-level framing loses most of its power, and Marcus sitting in the break room is not a careless person or a financially irresponsible person. He is a person operating with a shorter time horizon than the institutions he is doing business with. And the institutions always win when the time horizons are mismatched, so the adjustment is simply to borrow their time horizon and apply it to your own decisions. To ask not what this costs per month, but what it costs across a decade, and that single shift in framing will surface the legal theft in your own finances more reliably than any budget spreadsheet or financial advisor ever could. The three mistakes are not obscure, they are ordinary. They are the savings account you opened without comparing rates, the minimum payment you make faithfully every month, and the salary you have optimized without building anything parallel to it. And none of them will feel like theft when you look at them tomorrow morning. They will feel like the normal background of a financial life, which is precisely why they are worth looking at with the specific intention of seeing what they are actually costing you across the full length of time you plan to be alive.